Okay. Hey, so my name is John Ballantyne, and I am going to show you a tool that I and, well, mostly myself and a friend at work, Devin Kelly Sneed, have built for the Unreal Editor. We call it the Live Editor, and put simply, it allows you to tune and tweak just about any property of any object, not only in real time, but also through the use of off-the-shelf MIDI control hardware. Rather than explaining what that means or why it's cool in a really boring soliloquy, I think it would be better to just jump in and show a couple of examples of what's cool and possible with this tool. So I'm going to open the Live Editor tool, which just needs to be open for all this stuff to work. You may recognize it if you've spent some time in Unreal. It looks a lot like Kismet, which is not a surprise because it was built on top of all the same software that Kismet is built on top of. It was really easy to stand this up. But basically this is just an example of a lighting preset. I'm going to show you how the lighting works, and we'll talk about the concept of these presets later. And over here, I have my MIDI controller. This is just a standard off-the-shelf MIDI controller. This tool just uses the basic MIDI protocol through Port MIDI, which is a software API. And any off-the-shelf MIDI controller will just work with this tool. It's really easy. So show you an example of lighting. If I put a spotlight into the world, hitting this button here will bind the spotlight to this row of controls. This gives me control of the brightness of the spotlight, the saturation of the light. I can spin around the hue. It also gives me control of the cones of the spot. The other cool thing about this particular preset is that I have set up what we're calling checkpoints, which is basically save values. So if I hold this button down, a lot like in Ableton, I've essentially bound this light's properties to this button here for any light that's in this row. So if I add another spotlight in the world, bind it to that same row the other spotlight was on, a simple tap here will essentially copy that value over. This gives the lighters basically the ability to build a library of preset lights, and then can really quickly go through their levels, set things to a bunch of different known values. The next thing I'm going to race to is some camera stuff. This was one of the first presets that we played around with, and something that we got a lot of value out of just tuning and tweaking the player cameras. So if I start the level, as I run around, I have the ability on a couple of these different rows to play around with the camera placement, the FOV, how close or far the camera is from the player. And what's really cool about this is you can do it while someone is running around. So we can be running around, trying different positions. It allows us to try different types of cameras. So, you know, a really close-in dead space camera, a little bit of a further out Uncharted style camera. It basically allows you to really quickly explore a lot of values in pretty cool and interesting ways. And finally, the last one I will show very quickly is some stuff I have set up for tuning and tweaking the AI. What I have here is a preset that has a bunch of different things for different parameters of different AIs. So specifically their weapons. So the interval between shots, the number of shots in a burst, and then a pause between bursts. So the first thing I'm going to do before we even start is just kick this up to a little bit of a higher number so the AI will shoot more shots. I also have, in this particular level, a bunch of console events bound to buttons. So with a button press, I can go into God mode. I can spawn an AI, which is just activating a Kismet script in my level. I can hit another button, and the AI will enter the scene, and then I can just watch him fire. Right now he's set to use pretty much rifle settings, and I need to move this out of the way so I can see the numbers. So if I tune these values way down, he'll fire much more like an assault rifle. as soon as he gets unafraid from having been grenaded. So he's sending out a lot more shots now in his burst, really rapid fire. And again, if I tune these values way back up, the next time he fires, he'll be shooting rifle, single shot. This, again, is something that really cuts down the iteration time. There's no restarting, there's no editing text files, everything is kind of touch and feel. And the cool thing about the MIDI control software is that once you start to use it on a particular preset, you really get a feeling for which values are bound to which buttons. So I don't even need to think anymore when I'm doing lighting or anything like that about, okay, what was the name of that property? Was it brightness or was it just whatever? Back to the main live editor. I think the easiest way to explain how these presets work is just to create a new one. So I'll go to the unsaved preset, which is just the default blank preset. If I select a light in the world, hit F4, which is just the normal Unreal visibility property viewer. Up here, there's a new button we've added for toggle the live editor assignment buttons. Clicking that will put a button next to every type of property that the live editor currently supports. Clicking those buttons will do brightness, red, green, and blue. Pushes those variables directly into the live editor. There's no difficult configuration or anything like that. And so those are my variables. Now I need to add controls. These are all going to be knobs because my controller is pretty simple. Brightness, I just wire to here, just like you would in Kismet. We'll go from 0 to 100, that's fine. Red, green, blue, just to show one of the things we have. It's kind of unintuitive for us to tune in red, green, blue. So we created the concept of filters in the live editor, which will take input from the MIDI board and convert it through any kind of algorithm or filter that you want to write and output other values. So this is HSV to RGB. So if I just wire the RGB to my variables, I can add 3 new controls for HSV. S is saturation, V is value, which is basically the black level. These go from 0 to 1, and we'll do it in a step of 0.01. This just means that every time I get one click on the MIDI knob, this moves 0.01 value of V. And then hue, the way this particular thing works, just goes from -1 to 361. Wire that up, and if I look at the light in the level now, to bind controls, you select an unbound control, and you just twist the knob you want to twist. Already you can see the brightness changing. We'll do saturation next, since that's the most obvious one. This is bound to saturation. This is bound to hue now. You can see it spinning through the color wheel. And finally, this one is now bound to value. This is all really intuitive. And this is all the same lighting stuff I showed you up front. The cool thing about the concept of presets is, a lot like Ableton, you kind of only want to set this up once for your MIDI board per type of thing that you're tuning. So this gives me the ability to save this preset. I can give it a name. We'll call it demo lighting. Press OK. I'm not actually going to write it out to the package right now, but then you can see in this dropdown, demo lighting appears right here. So I can go back to the unsaved preset, nothing there anymore. Demo lighting, it's all right here. And the important thing to realize about the live editor is that it is tuning the values directly on the objects. So if I press this save all dirty packages, it's going to tell me, okay, you dirtied your own preset file and you dirtied AIZoo. So all the saving and loading is really easy in one place. Anyway, that is a very fast and very quick introduction to the live editor, but it should give you a taste of what's possible here. Just like Kismet, this is very easily extensible. We can add new types of controls, new types of filters, new types of variables, and new types of actions like executing console commands or doing the stuff I was doing with the lights to reassign it to a different object.